I like the cable cast on because it gives a nice, sturdy, decorative edge, perfect for edges that get a lot of wear like cuffs. It's very similar to the knitted cast on. You start with a slip knot. However, I prefer to not have knots in my knitting, so I just wrap the yarn around my needle like so, with the tail coming around above the working yarn as opposed to below it like this. You want the tail to be coming above the working yarn. And then you can start it without any knots. You simply hold that loop in place and treat it just like a slip knot. So, to begin this cast on, we're going to insert our needle into that slip knot and draw up a loop just like we're knitting. So there's my new stitch. But instead of sliding the slip knot off of the needle like we normally would, we're going to put the new stitch back onto the left needle. And now we have 2 stitches on the left needle. That was actually the knitted cast on. The cable cast on is very similar, except instead of going into the stitch like we just did, we're going to go between the top stitch and the next stitch, draw up a loop, but instead of sliding a loop off of the needle like we would normally when we're knitting, we're going to put that loop back on the left needle. And we just repeat that. We're going to go between the top stitch and the next stitch, draw up a loop. At this point, I pull the loop so it pulls that last stitch I made tight on my left needle, and drop that new stitch onto the left needle. Now you'll see I don't pull this stitch tight here that I just made yet, because if I did, it would be difficult to put my needle in it. So I'm going to put my needle in, draw up a new loop. Now I'm going to hold that loop and I'm going to pull it so it pulls that last stitch tight. You just continue that until you get the number of stitches that you want to have cast on, and you're done, just like any other cast on. Now I will warn you that if you pull this top loop, this very last one that you cast on tight, sometimes it's hard to see if where that top loop is, because it kind of crosses over the next stitch. So if that happens, if I've pulled that tight and I can't figure out which one of these stitches is the top one, and sometimes it's not obvious because sometimes it's kind of down like that, and this looks like it's the top stitch, but it's not. You want to gently pick at those stitches till you find the one that's connected to the working yarn. Oh, I just saw it move. It actually looks like it's the second one down. There. So now when I pull that one, it pulls that working yarn. So I know that is the last cast on stitch and will be the first stitch of my first row of knitting.